Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of Wealth Building Wednesday, brought to you by TRHT Selma. TRHT stands for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And you may have the question, what does wealth have to do with transformation? Well, honey, if you cannot answer that question, I cannot help you today, look, or any other Wednesday, because wealth is what it really does take for us to transform our community economically, socially, with education. Y'all know property taxes, things like that. We have to build our wealth. And as you know, in America, we have something called a wealth gap, where the majority of the wealth in this country is held by no more than 2% of our population. And we want to help change that dynamic by equipping people with information that can truly speak to the needs of the families and communities we serve. TRHT Selma serves the Selma Dallas County community. And we have, for the last 3 months, been talking about how to impact small businesses and entrepreneurs, people with great ideas. And I am super excited to have our guest today, Mrs. Danielle Wooten, who serves as the Director of the Planning and Development Department for the City of Selma. And yes, that has a lot to do with the wealth development in our community, because we want to plan ahead, right? When we do not plan, we plan to fail. And so it's going to be very important that we hold this conversation with Mrs. Wooten this morning, and just want to say welcome and good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. As you can see in our background, we have Washington Street, the supermarket area, which used to be a thriving space in downtown Selma. Black businesses abounded the area, and we are hopefully headed in that direction. You can kind of give us some inspiration this morning, but I definitely want to use this opportunity to introduce planning and development to our listeners and our viewers, because we hear those words, and again, when we fail to plan, we plan to fail, those type of quotes and things like that. But what does the Planning and Development Department do for the City of Selma?
Well, that's a really good question. And in a nutshell, we plan and we develop, but I'm just kidding. That's a joke, guys. Don't take it seriously. But in a nutshell, so the Planning and Development Department basically is the center of planning for our future. How do we, one, look at, assess, and capture the needs of the community? And then what things do we do as a city across all departments, across stakeholders, private, public, investors? What do we do in order to put a plan together to actually address those needs? So the first thing is one, assessing what are the needs of our particular community, and then two, developing plans through relationships to actually meet those needs. So one, that's what the Planning and Development Department does in a nutshell from a planning perspective and a development perspective. We also are a resource. We work with developers that are interested in coming into Selma, interested in investing in Selma. We have relationships, we have communications, we have meetings with those developers. One, to let them know, again, what are our needs? Because as someone comes into your community to invest, or even as locals, as we invest in Selma, we need to understand what is our market, what are the needs, and what can we, in order for us to know what to offer, we need to know what the needs are. And so that's kind of what we do based on the information that we gather from the community with our comprehensive plan surveys. We have meetings with local stakeholders where we get and capture their feedback on certain aspects of the quality of life in Selma. And so that's the information that we share. Of course, with the relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Selma EDA, they help us provide the actual data to support what are the market needs of Selma, so that people know what they need to invest in that would be sustainable for not only that private investor, but also sustainable for the residents of Selma and our community.
Absolutely.
And so that's one other piece. I could talk all day about it. But the third piece that I'll talk about just briefly, because I know it's a 30-minute show, is about grants. That's another big component of what the Planning and Development Department, what we do. So basically we work with all of our directors in all of our areas. Of course, we know the revenue in Selma is not we don't generate enough revenue to really be able to do the things that are needed within our community. And so that's where grant funding comes in, whether that's through state funding, whether that's through federal funding, whether that's through private foundations. We seek out grants in order to help us try to meet those needs that we cannot meet with the city's annual budget. And so all of that is housed in the planning and development department. So if whatever department it is, if public works has a need, if cemetery has a need, if parks and recreation has a need, they say, hey, this is something that we need, but it's not in our budget. Are there any opportunities out there that could help us get some funding so that we can do that? And so that's what planning and development does. And then the other piece of that is that we ensure that once we receive that funding, that we remain in compliance so that we keep good relationships with our funders so that we can continue to have those opportunities open to the city of Selma.
Absolutely. So now listen, you have laid out a lot of work that's happening in the planning and development department. And you also, though, talked about the team that it takes in order to make everything happen. So I'm super excited and really proud of the city of Selma for the teamwork that you all are displaying as department heads. And you in particular, I always tell you that you make Selma look good. Because you're actively pursuing things that can help us look good, right? Because people want to invest in, people want to participate in and are attracted to things that look good. So clean streets and well-painted buildings are something that I know that you all have been working hard across the board to make sure that we have. So now we do have a question from the audience. Mr. DK Harris wants to know it said several years ago, the Main Street program was being talked about all over Alabama. Is that a program that is still benefiting Selma? And if so, is it still actively helping?
Okay, that's a really good question. In the past, a few years ago, Selma did actually have a Main Street Selma. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, Selma does not have an actual board of directors that oversees a local Main Street program. Okay. However, we still have access to Main Street as a resource. And just a quick example of that is, I don't know if you guys are aware, but we were just awarded the T-Mobile grant. We applied for that grant and we were awarded it. But that T-Mobile grant, so T-Mobile has partnered with Main Street in order to provide those types of opportunities to small town America. And so, although we don't have an actual functioning Main Street Selma, we do still have those relationships. We do still maintain and are able to take advantage of some of the opportunities that Main Street creates, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. So the planning and development department, and you kind of talked about this when you described the workload in your department. You all recently collaborated with a host of community organizations to survey the community related to a long-term strategic plan. What did you learn from that? What are some of the most pressing needs that you all can clearly delineate that our community is starving for?
Absolutely. So with our comprehensive plan, we did get through the first round of community meetings. And so we did community meetings throughout Selma in every ward. And we got really good feedback. I think we had probably about 600 participants, give or take about around 600 participants, which is outstanding. It is. Given a survey, because normally it's under 100 if you even can get 100 participants. Right. And so we were able to do that. And we actually did get some really good feedback. We looked at economic development. We looked at downtown revitalization. We looked at neighborhoods and housing. We looked at education. We looked at health and wellness, recreation, quality of life issues. And so we do have survey results for that. And the major area that the community wanted to see more of was economic development, which is great that you all are doing Wealth Building Wednesdays and looking at that area in particular. 91% of the community thought that was the number one issue. I know a lot of people think crime is the number one issue, but given the results, that was not the case. Crime was actually the number two issue. Economic development was the first. issue.
Well, I think though that speaks to the connection that people are actually able to make when we think about, okay, so how does the development of a community impact crime? When you have a lot of poverty, you tend to have what is called the broken window theory, where poverty creates this sense of hopelessness, and crime begins to run rampant. So economic development is definitely important. That's a major part of what you do, and so we are delighted to have you here with us this morning. So now we started off in January, we with the series dedicated to entrepreneurs and small business owners. So I'm wondering if you can kind of just tell us, and I think that your mic may have muted itself. Yeah, there you are. um, if you could kind of tell us, as small business owners, or how can those who are small business owners currently benefit themselves and the community during the next few years by jumping in, and addressing this issue of economic development that the community desires?
Well, so the number one way that I think, if I was a community member and I was interested in starting a small business, or I was
Mhm.
interested in investing in Selma, I think the main areas that, from the survey as well, and just from,
Yes.
the data that we've looked at, the main sectors are, of course, retail.
Okay.
We're looking at restaurants, and another major area that we're undertaking within Selma is housing. Creating quality housing stock, which was another really, really, really important priority for the community from the results of the survey. And so, if I was a local individual and I wanted to do my part in helping Selma get to the next level, I would look at some of those areas, and of course, tourism. It would be very well, not easy, but it would be very, I'll say easy just for the sake of words. If, for instance, I had this proposal to do mini grants to try to jumpstart and
Yes.
invest and empower members of the community to create tourism centered businesses. And so,
Mhm.
for instance, if you received a $5,000 mini grant, and you wanted to create a business where you did pedal taxi tours. I don't know if a lot of people know what a pedal taxi is. Anybody that's visited New Orleans or Savannah knows what a pedal
Mhm.
taxi is. But it is very realistic that a company or an individual could go out and get a pedal taxi, and it would be for under $5,000. So if you were able to get that seed money of a $5,000 mini grant, you could go buy your first pedal taxi and immediately begin to give tours of Selma and charge visitors as they come into town. That's tours of Old Town, going looking at the antebellum homes. That's tours of the cemetery, going looking at the history of the cemeteries, the civil rights tract. And so that's a very real business that could be very lucrative and very profitable for someone with just an investment of $5,000. And so those are the types of things that I would tell people to think outside the box, and do some research and see what is a need here. Of course, we know that Selma is one of the most visited tourist locations in the state. How do I, as an individual investor, capitalize on that? What can I bring to the table? Restaurants. Of course, there are many vacant downtown buildings. Of course, they're not city owned. Most of them are privately owned, but contacting those owners and say, put together a business plan, have a pitch, say that I would like to open up this type of restaurant, because I know that there's a market for more restaurants that are needed for locals as well as visitors. Go to those property owners and say, hey, have you considered leasing or selling space in your building so that I can open up a retail shop? And so those are the types of things that I think the everyday person could actually do. I mean, and there are resources. I'm sure you guys are doing such a great job with educating the community, but there are resources under the USDA Rural Development Agency.
Yes.
There are resources under the Small Business Administration. And
Yes.
so there are resources. And so I think what you guys are doing is so needed and so important to educate people on how do I prepare myself first so that I can take advantage of these opportunities that are out here.
Absolutely. The fact that you are tuning in on the tourism is so important for Selma, because we literally can walk our visitors, people who choose to come to our city, from before there was a United States of America to the election of Barack Obama, and now the service of the first African American female vice president, right? So when we think about the amount of history that within our 14.1 square miles, it's really important that we take advantage of those opportunities and that young people begin to get involved in this process, because understand that a lot of the people who are the main stakeholders in telling our community's history are getting older. And not to say that they won't be here for decades to come, but we have to, as young people, right, and the generations behind you and I, really have got to pick up the torch and say, hey, how can I learn how to be a tour operator? What is it that I need to do, or how can I help you make your tour operation more successful? Can I
Absolutely.
manage your social media, right, so that we bring even more and more people into our community, and that way we don't have to worry about sales taxes from
Absolutely.
residents. We actually are, basically building the city because of tourism. We could probably
Absolutely.
have, if we work this tourism thing right, could probably have cobblestone streets if we wanted them, which are extremely expensive, y'all. That's, yeah, they are extraordinarily expensive.
Absolutely.
So I
And let
want
me just
to.
make one more note in regards to, as individual investors and small business owners.
Yes.
When we look at, we talked about, when we talked about what does planning and development do and how we use grants to try to, fill in the gap of where we don't have the revenue or the resources available through our regular city budget. And
Right.
so when we look at that and we think about the vacant buildings that we have, investing in those buildings and putting actual businesses, revenue generating businesses, that's also increasing the revenue that we have to turn around and invest back into the community. And so that is a major opportunity for people to do their part. So I just wanted to
Absolutely.
make note of that the more revenue generating businesses that we can have in downtown Selma, the better impact and benefit that's going to have on our city's revenue.
Absolutely. So I do want to quickly, though, say to viewers and to listeners, and that we are taking an even larger step, and bringing Wealth Building Wednesday into in-person events. So starting on Wednesday, April 20th, we will actually have Hope Credit Union in our community conducting small business clinics. So if you are a small business owner, or you have an idea about a small business, but you do not have an EIN, you do not have your name registered with the Alabama Secretary of State, you do not have your LLC or corporation established through the Secretary of State's office, we are offering you that opportunity free of charge, except you will have to pay your own fees for registering your name and securing your LLC. And then Hope Credit Union is also going to be on the spot signing small business owners up for their business banking accounts. We want to make sure that, like just what you said, Mrs. Wooten, that we are actually equipping people with those baby steps, so that we can start to take advantage of programs that are available through the Small Business Administration, available through the USDA, and so many other private foundations, people who just really
Absolutely.
want to see rural communities develop. And so we're helping in that way. So yeah, this is a great conversation, and I'm just so delighted that you were able to steal time away to have this conversation with us. So now, when we think about um, investors, right? And I've heard folks on radio shows or what have you talk about the crime, talk about education systems. What are the things that investors are looking for? Like we know what we want in the community, right? We want to see the economic development, but when we think about long term and people who want to invest millions of dollars into our community, say bringing new factories or schools or what have you, what are those folks actually looking at? What is it that they're looking for? And what assets does Selma bring to the table already?
So I think with any capitalistic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
if I am going to come and I am going to invest a substantial amount of money into something, there has to be a win-win situation. So I have to
Absolutely.
be able to get something from it. And so it's like, if I'm bringing this to the table, what are you bringing to the table? And the number one thing, I know it sounds very minute, is for them to feel that we are taking care of what we already have. And
Okay.
so having clean streets, clean neighborhoods, not trashing the city, not having trash on the grounds. Just, I mean, it's really minute and it's really small, but it can go a long way, because if someone comes into a town or a city and it doesn't look well taken care of, it's like
Right.
that is a risk for me to invest in something that I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a return of, or I don't know if it's going to be taken care of in a proper way that would generate a return. And so I think that is the main thing. Of course, education matters in order, when we look at large scale manufacturing and commercial economic development,
Yes.
education does matter, because as people come in and move into a town, they want to be able to ensure that their children are going to get a quality education. So yes, education matters. But when we look at low hanging fruit,
Mm-hmm.
just keeping the trash off the street, taking care of our properties, whether you own your home, whether you rent your home, cutting your grass, just going and buying you a gallon of paint from Walmart and just, painting your house, just being presentable, first impressions matter. And that is one
Absolutely.
of the main key things. The other thing is that, like I said, they want to know that you are investing in your own community. And like the Bible says, and I might not say this correctly, my pastor might get me, but the Lord says, if we cannot take care of a little, why would he
Mm-hmm.
bless us with more? And
Right.
so I think that we need to, we all have dreams, we all have hopes about what Selma could become and the potential. And we know that that's true. But we have to take care of what we actually have right now. And so that's, like I said, taking care of our properties, investing in prioritizing education from a parent's perspective, a community member's perspective, the school system, the teachers, is making sure that education is a priority, because that's only setting us up for the next generation to come
Yes.
back and invest back into this community. And so those are the main things that I would say, for they just want to see that there is some type of investment on our end as well. So even if we might not have the financial means to do the things, and that's
Right.
what they're bringing to the table, that's their role in the relationship. But what are we investing on our end?
And that investment, like you said, could just be picking up the paper out of our yards and off of the ground, or matter of fact, bothering to put it in a garbage can in the first place, right? Because and
Yes,
those things really do matter. Yeah, I just let's talk think about it from the perspective of someone visiting your home, right? Now, when I was being raised, my mom used to tell me, listen, the kitchen and the bathroom tell on a person, right? And how you keep things. That living room may be spotless. A lot of folks don't, use their living rooms anyway, right? But if you go in that kitchen and it's sticky stuff on the floor and it's, stuff in the sink, and now are you going to eat out of that house? We have to think about that and literally transfer that train of thought straight into the community.
absolutely.
How can we expect people to invest millions of dollars and incorporate us into the process when they don't see us putting forth any effort, when they don't see us looking to the left and to the right to say, hey, well, maybe Mrs. Johnson needs help with maintaining her grass this summer. Let me see if I can help her out. Or, oh my goodness, what's going on with this house to my right? Let me see if I can find out who owns that so I can reach out to them and say, hey, do we need to board up the windows and get some young people to do some artwork on those windows until you're able to come down and do something about the property, because the glass is getting broken. Y'all, that really is a theory. Broken windows theory actually talks about, you know, um, over policed neighborhoods becoming over policed, crime going up as a result, and a lack of investment as a result of these broken windows. So we can all play a part in making sure that our city is ready to thrive. Selma has
Absolutely.
extraordinary potential, and we all have a role to play. whether we are a mom raising children or whether we are an executive at the largest employer in the city. We all play a major role because listen here, mama raising those kids can say, hey, baby, get that up. And it's not about poverty. It's not about the neighborhood, y'all. And I know I'm talking, but it's like, Lord, you touched something when you said that about us taking pride in the community. Because I remember that my grandfather he was the sole provider. My mother and my uncle, Lord rest his soul, literally, they went to college on one income. My grandmother would rake the rocks in front of the yard to make sure they were neat and not in the street. Poverty does not indicate how you handle things. I never knew that that was poverty as a child growing up because we all had clean clothes, right? We had a clean kitchen, we had a clean bathroom, right? The porch was swept. We welcomed people in. So poverty
But
does
it's
not
really poverty. I think, and I don't want to get on that tangent, but
yeah.
when we look at a poverty mindset, I
Right.
know that statistics tell us if you don't make a certain amount of money, then you're living in poverty. But is that really poverty?
It's the
If all of my
mindset.
needs are fulfilled and I have a home that I take care of and I'm able
Right.
to feed my family and I'm able to clothe my family and I'm able to live a nice, decent life, is that really poverty?
Right.
Now, if we're not really doing that, then that's poverty.
That's
But if
different.
you're
Right.
exactly.
That mindset is everything because you can have $1 million and work your way back into what people would refer to as poverty, right? And living below um whatever standard people may have. But it's important that we really start to think about the importance of supporting one another in this community, making sure, again, clean up the streets, like make sure that we're not dropping paper and throwing stuff out of the window, putting furniture on the side of the road, right? And another thing and that we're going to help with is to make sure that people know how to. So when you vacate a property, let's make sure that people know how to discard of those items. So if you're moving stoves out or doing renovations, who are the people that we can call that can help nurture that process and make sure that we don't put appliances and TVs and couches on the side of the road? Because again, when investors come through, they don't always pick up the phone and call the city of Selma. They just get in cars
Absolutely.
and drive on through because they know, if I'm trying to get you to come somewhere, I'm going to put out the flowers, we're going to lay out the tablecloth. So no, we want to come when you don't even know we're here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everybody, y'all. We have all got to join in this effort to make sure that as we invest in our community, others are willing to invest as well. So as we begin to wrap up, 30 minutes goes by fast, and yeah, this is a huge topic. Are there any other things that you have observed or would care to enlighten us about, or even accomplishments that your department has made? I know that you all did receive the T-Mobile grant, but there's also a brand new space. It's not brand new, but it has been remodeled. And hopefully you're going to talk about that as we begin to wrap up. So what are some of the major things that you all are working on right now?
In general, the major things we're working on, of course, is the housing initiative and
Yes.
infrastructure. Those are our two main priorities as we prepare to ensure that Selma is shovel ready to receive the types of funding that's going to be coming out from the infrastructure bill, all of the COVID funding sources and opportunities. And so those are our main things. We've been working really hard to partner with other coalition members throughout the county, as well as throughout the Black Belt, other cities
Yes.
and other mayors to prepare and ensure that we're shovel ready. One of the projects, I don't know if you guys follow the council meetings. I would encourage people to tune in to council meetings because that's where you're actually going to really hear what's really going on within city government. And you don't have to go on hearsay or go on what somebody else said. And that is the best way to stay updated on what's actually going on. But we worked on a project to a $1.5 million project to repave the main streets in downtown Selma. That's all of the main streets except Broad and Dallas, of course, because they're state
Oh, okay.
highways. But that includes Water, that includes Selma, Alabama, Lauderdale, Washington, Franklin. I think that's 7 streets. But that project is not funded right now. But we have a plan. We've applied for some grant funding so that we can stack resources, utilize some of the city resources that have been aggregated over time that we can apply to that. We've reached out to the county commission to ask them to share in getting that done, because we know that Selma is the county seat of Dallas County. And also that those roads that we are trying to pave directly adjacent to the county courthouse. And so that's one large project that we're trying to get that done. Again, to show that we are taking care of the little that we have. And we
Yes.
are trying to be very strategic and creative with how we're able to get these things done, because we don't have just $1.5 million in the city budget
Right.
to put towards street surface resurfacing. And so we have to get creative in how we are trying to accomplish and meet the needs of our community. And that is a major project, because as developers come into town, that's something that they're going to see immediately is the
Yes.
condition of the roads, particularly for the downtown area. Now, that doesn't mean that, Public Works isn't working hard to ensure that potholes throughout the city are
Yes.
formed. And, we're not trying to do projects where we can. But when we look at the biggest return on investment, we have to invest in our downtown area, because if we do that, the return is going to be exponential for us to be able to have the offshoot of being able to invest into our
Yes.
neighborhoods. And so that's one project. I didn't want to take up too much time with that one, but that's one project. The other project, of course, is the infrastructure plan. So we did a citywide assessment, looking at our sanitary sewer system as well as our drainage system. Because
Mm,
again, as investors come in, if I'm going to invest a large amount of money, I need to know that the infrastructure is in place so that I am not jeopardizing again my investment. And so
right.
we've done a pre-application to ADEM. That's a $17 million project that looked at the city's drainage system as a whole, and where are the very critical needs that need to be invested in. Um, that was done. We've applied for, I think, about a $22 million pre-application regarding the sanitary sewer system. And so if we are able to get the funding and that opportunity is afforded to Selma, that is going to be very transformational for our community. If we can
Absolutely.
address the roads in downtown Selma. And now that's just one project. Now we do have a complete project, a plan for the critical roles throughout the city, but that's just for the downtown streets. But if we can address our infrastructure regarding our roads, if we can address our infrastructure regarding sanitary sewer, and if we can
Mhm.
address our infrastructure regarding the drainage system, that would be transformational, because I don't know if people know, but Selma's infrastructure has not been
Oh,
updated
yes.
in years. I mean, like
Yes.
decades,
Decade.
decades. Yeah,
Yes.
decades. So
Yes.
that would be transformational. So that's something that we're very proud of, that we are working on, actively working on. We're having meetings with all types of representatives, from our local representatives up to, our national representatives. We are working on our housing initiative. And I'll just try to be really quickly, because I know this is really not what the program is about. But in Selma, we have probably a little less than 100 dilapidated tax delinquent properties that are city owned because they're tax delinquent. And
Hmm.
there's about over 200 that are state owned. And so we've been working with the Alabama Department of Revenue in order to see how can we acquire. Now, we're not going to take all of them, but acquire very strategically those properties that are one. So we've done a map that overlays city-owned properties with state-owned properties, so that we can
Yes.
outline and be able to identify areas of redevelopment. And then once we move through that process, which I'm not going to get into the long drawn out process, the end result is that those areas can be revitalized. And so whether that's areas where the properties are in decent condition and they can be rehabbed, and that's another place where local investors can meet a need and find a niche
Yes.
in rehabbing these homes that are dilapidated structures that are causing blight in our neighborhoods. So whether that's rehabbing homes or whether that's going through a demolition process, clearing land and having investors come in and do new, um, you know, full scale, whether that's 10 to 15 homes or multifamily homes or townhomes, whatever that's going to look like, that's going to help transform our neighborhoods and revitalize our neighborhoods. So I think those are the main areas that we're focused on right now. I know you mentioned the Welcome Center, so I will do a
Yeah,
little plug for the
yeah,
Welcome Center. And that's just another example of how investing just a little, taking care of the little that you do have. We did go in, we did a renovation of the Welcome Center. We got new flooring, we got new paint, we did new merchandise. And so it just looks like a more welcoming, and we do have upgrades to the exterior as well that are going to be forthcoming in the next few months. That's also going to be funded through some grant awards. But so give us some time. We're not there yet, but you can go in there. It's going to be a
yes,
pleasant experience. You're going to be able to get some cool merchandise that will go right back into Selma. And so those are the types of things, and those are the things we want to see private investors do. Go
yeah,
down there and buy one of those buildings that's vacant. Go lease one of the vacant buildings and put some revenue generating businesses into it. And it doesn't really take a lot of money. Like I said, Lydia has done a great job. They're going to continue to give you guys the resources that you need. And that's really how we work together as a community to meet our
yeah.
needs.
Absolutely. So you have given us a wealth of information on this Wealth Building Wednesday. We truly appreciate you for taking time out to have such a critical conversation, because we all do. We all play a role in the success of our community. And if you're a small business owner, you are looking for a place to locate your business, do what Mrs. Wooten said. Find out who owns that building. Reach out to the building owner and say, hey, would you be willing to lease me this space? Or are you in the market to sell? This is
Absolutely.
a prime opportunity for us to get together, because we are together. That's the theme of our city government. We are together. Let's
Absolutely.
get
And our
together and
department is a resource. If
yes,
you don't know how to find out who that landowner
yes,
is, you can absolutely give us a call, and we can provide you the information that we have on file for who that landowner is. This department is here to be a resource, to be able to
yes,
reach our goals, our development goals as a whole, not just the city's development goals, city
right,
government, but the city's
right.
development goals.
Absolutely. So, see, the city is working on your behalf. We are super excited to be a part of making Selma a better place to live, work, and play. Right. So, we want to encourage each and every one of you all who are watching. If you're listening live on our media partner, WBFZ 105.3, you all please make sure that you're reaching out, connect to the people, email us. I'm actually putting in the chat the link for those folks who may want to join us for the business clinics featuring Hope Credit Union. So there are opportunities that abound in our lovely city of Selma, Alabama. Take advantage of the opportunities. We all have a role to play in building our city forward. So again, thank you so much, Mrs. Wooten, for joining us this morning. And we definitely
Thank
look forward to seeing
you.
your face again.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We can
So
talk all
until
day.
I know, right? Look. So until next Wednesday, we want to wish you well. Y'all be safe in this weather out here today. And listen, in the meantime, get to building that wealth.